House of Frankenstein, now we're talking. This is the first movie to not only team up Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman, but Dracula too. These are the big three. You see these monsters' likenesses grouped together constantly. In the Munsters, Groovy Ghoulies, the Drac Pack, the Monster Squad TV series, the Monster Squad movie, but this is the monster mash that started it all. The only thing disappointing is that none of the monsters share the same screen time. Dracula is only in the beginning, Frankenstein's monster only comes alive at the end, and the rest is all about the Wolfman. The main running theme in the Frankenstein films is that there's always some kind of doctor who follows in Frankenstein's experiments. There is Dr. Pretorius, Wolf Frankenstein, Ludwig Frankenstein, Dr. Frank Mannering, and now Dr. Niemann, played by Boris Karloff. The film opens in a jail cell where Niemann and his hunchbacked assistant Daniel are talking about the idea of brain transplanting.
Now this brain is taken from the man and transplanted into the skull of the dog.
Wait a minute, put a human brain into the skull of a dog? Would that fit? And when did Frankenstein ever do interspecies brain transplanting? Whatever the case, they never mention this again for the rest of the movie. Niemann says his brother worked with Frankenstein and passed on his secrets to him. Now, hang on, who was his brother? Could it have been Fritz, Karl, Igor, or maybe even Dr. Pretorius? Who knows? A random bolt of lightning makes the prison explode all of a sudden, conveniently allowing Niemann and Daniel to escape. They meet up with a guy named Lampini who runs a traveling sideshow exhibit featuring the original skeleton of Count Dracula. One glaring bit of inconsistency here is that Lampini says he found the skeleton in Transylvania.
From the cellar of Dracula's castle in the Carpathian Mountains.
We all know Dracula moved to England and that's where he was killed by Van Helsing. Only in the novel does Dracula flee back to Transylvania where he's killed by Quincy Morris and Jonathan Harker. I'd say they were counting the novel as canon, but that's not true either because they say Dracula was killed with a wooden stake, whereas in the novel it was by knives. I guess they couldn't make up their minds if they wanted to follow the book or the movie. Niemann orders Daniel to kill Lampini and takes over his exhibit. No, Niemann doesn't have any real interest in parading Dracula around, he just wants to use it as a cover-up to hide from the police. But when he pulls the stake from Dracula's skeleton, Dracula comes alive again. If that's all it takes, I guess you can say Dracula is truly immortal. What would have happened if the stake fell out by accident, or if it rotted away after many years? Or when the skeleton turns to dust, could he still come back? Maybe I'm thinking about it too hard. Well, if you were waiting for Bela Lugosi to appear, you're wrong. I remember how disappointed I was as a kid. Get used to it. Dracula is played by John Carradine, a good actor who I've come to appreciate over the years, but he doesn't have the same magnetic presence that Lugosi had, nor is he as charming and exotic. He plays the part well, but it's nothing too special. Though to be fair, he doesn't get a whole lot of time. Dracula is a slave to Niemann in exchange for keeping his coffin safe.
I will do whatever you wish.
Which really underplays Dracula's power. Niemann uses Dracula as a tool of revenge, killing the police officers who sent him to jail, very much the same way as Son of Frankenstein, where Igor used the monster to kill the jurors who had him hanged. Lionel Atwill is in there again as another inspector, his fourth Frankenstein movie in a row. I like how the main characters are out just to have fun. They go to the Chamber of Horrors, they take a walk through the fog, they hitch a carriage ride with some stranger who happens to be Dracula, then they stop somewhere to sit down and have some wine. They just go with the flow like dorm-hopping college students. They set the template for future slasher films. Dracula is killed only 25 minutes in. Dracula's on the run from the cops and is trying to catch up with Niemann and Daniel, who are still using Lampini's horror wagon. They have Dracula's coffin, and they don't want the cops after them too, so Niemann's decision is to dump the coffin, leaving Dracula scrambling to reach it before the sun rises. But it's too late, and Dracula's turned once again to bones. This ends the Dracula story, and never again do we see any of the other characters, except for Niemann and Daniel. It's like a short film before the main feature. Niemann and Daniel travel to Frankenstein's town, and on their way, witness a dancing gypsy girl named Ilana, who Daniel takes an immediate liking to. Her boss takes all her money and beats her. Daniel comes to the rescue and puts him in his place. They take Ilana along for the ride. She's very friendly with Daniel, but is shocked at first sight of his deformity. It's a legitimately heartbreaking scene. This little love story going on here between Daniel and Ilana is just like Quasimodo and the gypsy girl Esmeralda in Hunchback of Notre Dame. Daniel swings around like a monkey, similar to the athletic nature of the original Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1923, starring Lon Chaney Sr. It's as if they were trying to throw in another famous monster here as a bonus. Daniel is played by J. Carrol Naish. Both him and Lon Chaney Jr. teamed up again in the 1971 shitfest Dracula vs. Frankenstein. Fate would have it, it was the last film for both of them. Niemann explores the remains of the Frankenstein castle and finds the body of the Wolfman and the monster frozen in ice. He thaws them out. The monster is still in a dormant stage, but the Wolfman, Larry Talbot, is alive and pissed off.
Why have you freed me from the ice that imprisoned the beast that lived within me? Why?
He wants peace from his werewolfism, which he can only find in death, but Niemann promises him that he can cure him by transplanting his brain into another body. He's made the same promise to Daniel, who no longer wants to be a hunchback, something he's promised him since the opening jail scene.
If I had Frankenstein's records to guide me, I could give you a perfect body.
So now he's got two promises to fulfill, but instead focuses his attention on trying to revive the monster and playing a big game of brain swapping. He kidnaps two of his former assistants, Ullman and Strauss, who betrayed him. He plans to put Ullman's brain into the skull of the monster and the brain of the Wolfman into Strauss. According to Niemann, that will make him turn into the Wolfman. So the werewolfism is a disease of the brain. Okay, fine, I can go with that. But he acts as if Strauss would be aware of this happening. No, it would only give Larry Talbot another body to become the Wolfman. It doesn't solve anything for Larry, and what the hell does he plan to do with Strauss's brain? Then he wants to put the monster's brain into Larry's body. What good does that do? It's just like combining the Wolfman and the Frankenstein monster into one. Wolfenstein. Well, we got a love triangle going on here. Ilana is no longer paying any attention to Daniel. Now she likes Larry.
Because I like you.
What a whore. Poor Daniel. It's all because he has a hump on his back. He wants Niemann to put his brain in Larry's body, but instead Niemann is committed to having the monster's brain go in there for whatever reason. Daniel tries to warn Ilana that Larry is a werewolf, and she yells at him because she thinks he's jealous.
He's a werewolf.
No, I don't believe you. You're making it all up because you're jealous. I hate you. You're mean. And you're ugly. I hate you. I hate you.
That's harsh. I hate you and you're ugly? There's nothing worse you can say to somebody. Daniel takes out his frustration on the lifeless monster, unaware that he is conscious. We all know where this is going. Well, Ilana actually does believe Daniel, and she sympathizes with Larry's werewolf problem. Well then, why did she have to yell at him? She hates the poor guy just because he's a hunchback, but she likes Larry even though he's a werewolf and could possibly kill her. It's just because he's more handsome. What a fucking bitch. I can't wait to see the Wolfman tear out her goddamn throat. Oh yeah, it's happening. Here we go. Larry becomes the Wolfman in the most well-done transformation scene yet. It all builds up to an exciting finale where every one of the main characters is killed off in a row. The Wolfman attacks Ilana just as she shoots him with the silver bullet and they both die together. Daniel mourns her death and blames Niemann. Just as Niemann's finally bringing the monster to life, Daniel decides he's had enough and his boss can go to hell. We only see what Daniel does to Niemann in shadow as the monster unstraps itself from the table. It's a great shot that leaves what happens to our imagination. The monster gets up, picks up Daniel, and throws him through a window where he falls to his death. The scream is actually recycled from Karloff in Son of Frankenstein. The monster picks up the crippled body of Niemann, and in this one instance, both look each other in the face. It's as if Boris Karloff and the monster are sharing a special bond. Fitting that he was the one who first gave life to the role. It's a wonderful little beat. It's interesting to see him in the role of the Doctor this time. The monster is played by Glenn Strange, an appropriate name, and he ends up playing the monster in all the movies from here on out, making him and Karloff the only actors to play the monster in 3 consecutive movies. The villagers all show up with their burning torches, as usual. They didn't waste any time, did they? The monster's only been alive for a few minutes. Those villagers, man, they're pros by now. They don't take this monster shit. The monster carries Nimon's body out into the swamp and sinks into quicksand. Karloff, who's had enough of getting his face covered in monster makeup, is now getting covered in mud. And then, without pissing away any of the momentum, the movie ends. It's great. For a movie that tries to juggle a bunch of monsters, it's quite good at telling its story. All the characters have wants and desires, with Dr. Nimon being in the center of it all. He's such a great villain because he breaks his promises with everyone. Larry, Daniel, and even Dracula. I would have liked to see him double-cross other Universal monsters. How about he poses as an Egyptian museum curator and resurrects the mummy? Then, when he doesn't need the mummy anymore, he pulls off his bandages. What if it was the Invisible Man? He'd somehow make him turn visible right at the worst possible time. This is the kind of villain that only good old Boris can pull off with such class. I also like the way all the monsters are legitimately killed and in their most appropriate ways. Sunlight for Dracula, a silver bullet for the Wolfman, and Nimon dies together with the monster. The monster and Karloff are one. It's well fitting and could have been the perfect way to end the series.